My motivation was the podcast. It's like, I love this thing. It makes me feel good. I get passion from it. I get it in creativity from it. And that was my motivation. That was it. It was like having the next conversation.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started. Hi, Be It Babe. Okay, this was such a fun interview to do. I had the pleasure of meeting our guest and his wife when Brad and I were at this, we're invited to this thing that I'm not gonna lie. We're invited to this thing. You probably heard us talk about it back around the April, May time. And we're like, how did we get invited to do this? Like, what are we doing here? We're not even experts in this area. And we had to be it till we see it in that space, in the moment. And that's when we met Jose and Britt, and they're the podcast hosts of Finding Arizona. Brad and I had the pleasure of being on their podcast. Yes, Brad, that our Brad was on a podcast. You guys, he is a performer and we hide him behind a camera, but we really shouldn't because he's so amazing. So anyways, I am super excited for you to hear Jose and I talk about podcasting, about starting something new. So you don't have to you don't turn this off if you're like, I never want to have a podcast. I think it's really cool to hear how people come up with ideas and then see yourself in that story. So we talk about starting a podcast, what it's like to start something that we have no accountability around. We have to create it ourselves. So if you're someone who has a hard time with that, like hearing the story. And then also we talk a lot about goal setting and working with your partner and kiddos and what's next. So this is just a really, I feel like you probably are going to feel like you're having coffee with Jose and I. So here is the host of Finding Arizona, Jose Acevedo. All right, Be It Babe. This is fun. It's always fun for me when I get to talk to a fellow podcaster, but it's really fun when I really know that podcaster and we have a great story and they have a great vibe. Jose Acevedo, you are our guest today. You are the host of Finding Arizona. And you guys, don't worry if you don't know where Arizona is. We're going to talk more than just Arizona today. But can you tell us who you are and what you rock at?
Yeah, my name is Jose Acevedo. I am a podcaster. And I'm also like a fan of you, Lesley. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm a true cheerleader for the locals here who are doing what they love to do, their passion projects, everything in between from nonprofit to high CEOs in corporate areas. We want to get to know them, their story, and how they come into the world and how they journey across and make an effort to be a community member here in Arizona.
So I feel like you are the greatest cheerleader. Like you have curiosity, you're excited about people are doing, and you want to share their stories. Is that something that you went to school for? Is that something you've always done? You don't even doing a podcast about everybody else's stuff. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. So I spent a bit of my life on the East Coast, and that's where my father and my mother took me to go really early on in my childhood to really kind of give me an opportunity. A, they wanted to get out of the heat of Arizona, but B, they wanted to move to other places where their children could learn and grow and kind of get a unique sense of the world. And then when I moved again for the second time, and this was a very significant point in my life, I was going away from being an adolescence to a kind of a teenager and into the kind of adulthood. And we moved back to my mom's Indian reservation. And that is near the Four Corners here in Arizona. It's the Hopi Reservation. And I knew very little to almost nothing about my heritage and my Hopi culture. And so that was a very big pivotal learning point about who I am as an individual, who I want to be as a man in the future. And the biggest kind of teacher in that was my grandfather, who was an elder in the community, who held a lot of stories and who also really loved storytelling. And that was really kind of that moment of like really crux of getting to understand what storytelling meant and what its importance was, what it can do for a society and a culture that has been on this earth for so long and has thrived just from hearing these stories and using that as a religion. And so for me, I had to very much dive deep into, these different types of elements of storytelling, but how they also relate to my own life. And it was hard. It was definitely something very significant where I pushed back on it at points. I definitely had my moments of like teen angst and those types of things, but I also learned a lot about who I am and who my people are and what I want to give back into this world and give back into society and culture. So that was a really big point in my life of like learning about who I am and who my culture was. Then I came down to Phoenix and went to college and really kind of stumbled upon podcasting as kind of this new wave of having a dialogue and having conversation and actually storytelling to the masses, but also having these intimate conversations with individuals. So, really, how it turned out to be what it is today is I was having conversations with business owners about their business through screen printing. I was screen printing t-shirts for these different owners, and I would just have a really fun time having these conversations and really getting to like go back and forth with them, getting to know them and what they're about and all these things. And they seem to really enjoy it. I'd get comments like, "Oh, I really love this conversation. Thank you for having with me. Thank you for showing interest. Oh, you should be a news reporter or you should be on the radio." All these types of compliments. And really, it dawned on me when I was screen printing their shirts and listening to other podcasts that I'm like really enjoying of like, oh, I should just do this. This has always been fun for me to listen to. I should at least attempt to do these conversations or record them. So that kind of snowballed into had to learn how to record, had to learn how to edit, had to learn how to do a website, how to like upload them and just create this thing that I thought was cool that now has now become a big part of my life and a big part of my family's life. My wife got involved by meeting me and I had to tell her can't really go out on dates on weekends because I'm doing this thing recording and editing and all these things, and she was like, "Oh, I love podcasts, let me listen to it." And so that has now turned into her becoming my producer, and now my son has just been born 3 years ago during the pandemic, and we were doing a lot of Zoom calls, and now he knows that when dada goes to work, it's like a lot of the times it's podcasting. So he's like, "Dada, you go do podcasts?" And it's just been really that thing that has affected me on a personal level, but me on a grander scale of legacy.
I mean, and you've been doing this for 10 years, Finding Arizona.
Yeah.
So, like, y'all, we've been only podcasting for about 3.5 years at this point. Podcasting has been around for a really long time,
Mhm.
but so
Yeah.
few people knew how to find the app on their phone and knew what it was. And what I just thank you for sharing the journey because it's so cool. You were already doing something. And then people were like, this is really cool that you do this. And so you took it. And so many people are like, how'd you come with this idea? How'd you come with this idea? Y'all listen to what people are saying you're really great at or complimenting
Mhm.
you on because that's what
Yeah.
they think you're great at. And it's so easy and natural for you. You don't see it as an opportunity or something that's unique because it's natural to you. But what a cool gig. I love it. And also, the people are already coming to you. So you're like, what is
Yeah.
this shirt for? This automobile thing. How did they do it?
Yeah.
I love that. Also, thank you for sharing your story about your grandfather. I think there's a book called Sapiens, and I
Mhm.
didn't read the whole thing, you guys. It's really long. I kept it. I haven't given it away because I swear I'm going to pick it up. But what they say is that humans actually stayed in existence because of storytelling.
Yeah.
And I do think that, the Native Americans have really shown us that storytelling is really how we keep we understand what happened in our past. We understand where we're going. We understand things on a bigger level than just us as humans. And I think it's so beautiful. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Of course.
Okay, you had to learn all these things, be a podcaster. You all who are trying to make something new happen in your life, whenever we say podcast, and you can insert what you are doing, trying to be. What was it like having the first interview? Because you already were good at it because you'd ask people questions, but then you had to like
Yeah.
hit record. Were you
Yeah.
shaking in your boots? Did it feel easy? Did you re-record it? Tell us about it.
So I think you're absolutely right when it comes to these we had this conversation on my podcast and just off air where I feel sometimes I'm like, I'm so nervous and flustered because I'm such a fan of people who come on our show because we do research about these people and we're like, oh, they're so cool. They're like this and that. And so I get nervous just because I have this excitement about me. So, yes, my very first episode where I said to myself, yes, I want to record, I want to do this, I want to make it a thing. I actually did it with my boss, like of the screen printing shop, because I felt like A, we had a great dynamic. We were just really fun and chit chatty with each other. And B, I felt like all of his stories were so funny and so like dynamic and filled with all of these intrigue, and just the way he said things was just so funny to me. And it was, yeah, it was exciting to me to share what he was about, but again, it was like so nerve wracking because I didn't know if this was going to work, or I didn't know if any of my equipment was done right, or if I was like, I'm just shooting myself in the foot. We might have to record and into other things. And it's like, I was so nervous. And really, I just wanted it to be a fun situation, which it was. It was so much fun. And I really look back on it and I was like, oh my gosh. So he was barely paying attention to, he's working on other shirts. And I was like having
While
this
you're interviewing
conversation
him.
while we're interviewing. But he was so great though, because he could do that
Yeah.
and then still have the conversation and throw in the quips, throw in the bits, throw in the
Probably made
funny
him
and
feel
all
even
the,
more comfortable because he wasn't like
absolutely.
sitting
It
down
was
and
in his garage,
professionally
like
record.
his,
Yeah.
yeah, his thing. And it was just me saying, hey, can I record this? And then it turned into, I like the way that this felt. I like the feeling of it. It wasn't so great that like, did I think it was going to be this Pulitzer Prize winning interview thing? No, but I love the way it felt. I love the way it turned out. And I was like, maybe let's try it again, but let's sit down with someone who's not so busy. It's like someone who's like a little bit more attentive and paying attention to me and my conversation with them. And it would just go from one client to the next. And I was like, oh, there's a way to like, then you start to pick out like, oh, there's a way to ask this question, or there's a way to steer them into this one area, or they draw their guard down when after the half hour mark. So I should get more personal questions towards the end there. And so if you really learn the dynamics of a conversation and through so much of doing it repetitively and doing the work over and over again.
You know, as true. It's also like you're never going to be 10 years version of you versus 1 year.
Yeah.
Like you can't learn the 100th times experience until you've done it 100 times. Like it's just got to
Yeah.
happen. We have to have grace with ourselves. And also, it is true. The more you do it, the more you realize who are fun people to interview. What are the qualities? That
Yeah.
person has a great story, but they're not a really good interview. So if we're having a hard time having a conversation, it's not going to go well. Well, versus when do I ask the questions that are more personal, that do take more vulnerability? Some people, you know, when you podcast a lot like we do, I can get vulnerable on an episode pretty early on because I know what I know that I can share.
Mhm.
I know how it
Yeah.
usually goes. But not everyone's like that. Some people are amazing experts and they do a few podcasts. And so we have to kind of understand when the best time is to bring things on. I want to know, because you started this on your own
Mhm.
and you were also like, let me see how this goes. So
Yeah.
how did you hold yourself accountable to releasing the episodes? Because the thing about anything is you have to be consistent. And especially at the time when podcasting wasn't really big, you
Mhm.
know, how did you choose to be consistent with something you didn't know what it would be yet?
So yeah, I think it goes back to, I think one of the early starts in my beginning was like goal setting. Like, how do I want this to be a thing, or how do I want this to come out? And so one of the very first conversations that I had was, do I want this to be a weekly? Do I want this to be monthly? Do I want this to be a series? And how do I want to put out this series? And so I just really kind of more approached it from a that kind of goal setting. Let's start off slow. Let's do it a monthly, or I think it was monthly in the very first beginning of like, I'm going to have these deep conversations for more than an hour or an hour long, and really hone in on the individual and have those deep realm conversations. And then once I had a few underneath my belt, I really started to say, okay, I think I can push this even further. And like really after the first year, I was like, okay, let's go to every 2 weeks, like a bi-weekly. Then it came to like, oh, I am really getting emails from a lot of places that wanted to be on the show or was showing interest. And I was like, okay, well, now I have a lot of interest. And I also, at that point, I started, having someone follow, do the pictures and help me out a little bit. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. I can make this a weekly thing. And so I pushed myself even further to make it a weekly podcast and have these really fun conversations, and also Then we got to some really fun goal setting there, where it's like there was a month that was just filled with farmers. And when we started to really
That's
push the
cool.
envelope on some of these ideas and had some fun throughout the years that we'd been doing it. How does this podcast work, or how does it look like? What do people find interest in, or what are some of the things that are really pushing the envelope of like how this community works here in Arizona or here in Phoenix, particularly. So it was really kind of listening to the audience and also goal setting for myself is really what kept me going. And because I had such an intrigue on not only the people who were coming onto the podcast, but an intrigue in making this a business, I think it was kind of easier to say, okay, these are the goals. This is how I want to approach it. This is how I want it to come out. This is how I want it to be seen. And how do I make sure that I get these? Well, it's baby steps. Okay, first you get the yes from the person, then you schedule them, and then do the conversation, and then you set a date of like when they're going to come out, and then you make sure you edit in that time frame. It's those little baby steps that'll move you forward and move the needle here and there. And so it was just again one part my end of like goal setting and listening to the audience, but two, make sure that you write down your goals and push yourself to reach those goals and make sure that it comes out.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the baby steps because I think that's where people get they'll goal
Mhm.
set, then they don't break it down to
Yeah,
baby actions, and then it just
baby
feels
actions. Yeah,
overwhelming to do. And then they think they need motivation, which is the biggest lie because that's inconsistent. So,
yeah. My motivation was the podcast. I love this thing. It makes me feel good. I get passion from. I get it creativity from it, and that was my motivation. That was it. It was like having the next conversation.
so do you podcast full time? This is your job now, or do you have
So
other things you do?
I'll be honest, no, this isn't my full-time gig, but it feels like a second job almost. But I'll be honest, I when we the pandemic hit, I was working with a landscape architecture firm, and that's what I went to school for, is landscape architecture. And I had a real choice because we were getting a lot of intrigue in the podcast. But what happened was Brittany got pregnant
Mm.
and it was the pandemic. She was actually coming out of a job in the healthcare system. And we were really worried because she would hear horror stories from the healthcare about the pandemic and about people suffering through this
Oh,
thing.
our healthcare
And
workers were,
yeah,
like,
or
truly
healthcare workers.
were
Yeah.
on the front line, and we didn't really have a lot of support for them. We still don't.
Yeah.
That didn't
Yeah. And
change.
it's, and so for me, I was like, oh man, I'm bringing this new life into the world. I need to figure out a way to make sure that he's healthy. And so I took a job at a bigger firm that would allow me to work from home and be with him, but also give me health insurance. And really, I like to say I'm not afraid to let go of that job right now to move into podcasting full time. But for the time being, my son is safe, my family's healthy, and we are still working consistently on this podcast. And it hasn't worn on me, it hasn't made me feel tired. I just love what I do. And if I can do this continuously the way that we have been, I'm okay with that. But we're at that pivotal point too. It's like, which one of us is going to let go of their job to go full time with this podcast?
I know.
And I don't know. We still have this conversation. And I'll be honest, like all the time, like, who's gonna do it? Or what are we gonna do? And we
Yeah.
just kind of look at each other and we're like, it's a good problem to have,
Yeah.
but we're still at a standstill. We're still waiting. I think we have a goal set. I think that we have clientele. And once we reach that number of clientele that will allow us to let go of one of the jobs that we work, then we'll move into more full time. And I think that's a good,
I think
again,
that's
goal
so
setting
wise.
types of things where it's like baby steps. We have an actual number. And once we hit that, then that'll be the key to unlock the door of full-time work and working that podcast full-time.
Thank you. And also, it's here's the thing. These are all things we have to think about. It's really funny when people know that I'm on YouTube. They're like, "Oh, you must make so much on YouTube." I'm like, "Not everyone's a
Yeah,
full-time YouTuber."
yeah, yeah.
The amount of money I spend on the payroll to edit the YouTube is not how much I get paid from YouTube. I get paid. I get paid monthly, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for watching those views. Keep watching. But we glamorize things and we think, oh, they're doing this, so it must be doing so. And yes, the ads you have or content fees
Mhm.
or all the different appearances that can all bring an income. But you and I live currently in a place where healthcare isn't a given. And so unfortunately,
Hmm.
someone has to have it. And
Yeah.
two, I'll just be really honest, guys. Someone has to have a W-2 in a relationship because if you both, like our Brad and I, and you work for the company, no one wants to give you a loan.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
the hoops, it took us 18 months to get our mortgage. 18 months. We could, to pay the bill we're already paying. So I share that because it's frustrating.
Hmm.
And if you're in that situation, we see you and we
Yeah.
hear you. And it's the other thing that we talked about on your podcast, Finding Arizona, is putting pressure on something before it's ready can actually destroy it. Or
Yeah.
Big Magic. Have you read the book Big Magic?
No, I'm
Oh,
gonna write
put it
this
on your
down.
list. Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love girl. So her book, Big Magic, I have read multiple times. And she says, ideas want to be born. So if you have an
Mhm.
idea and you don't act on it, someone else will do it, which is why you're like, oh, I had that idea. Like you didn't do anything with it, right? So there's that. But
Yeah.
also, she says, if your idea is artistic, if it's creative, and
Mhm.
you try to live off of it before it is ready, you will filter, change, correct, you might even lower standards or make decisions based on the income you need at the time
Yeah.
versus what the art was, the creativity, the vision, the goal was in the first
Mhm.
place. So she shares she did not quit her job as a professor even after she sold Eat, Pray, Love to the movies.
Wow. Wow.
She really waited until she knew I can live off of me being Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
it's really awesome. And I really love that vulnerability because there is a dream I have where I just get to interview people and go on retreats and,
Yeah.
teach my mentorship, but also got a mortgage to pay.
Yeah.
I got
You gotta
retirement.
work towards it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
we got
I
retirement accounts we want to make sure there's a lot going on. So you have to kind of balance, like, am I playing small or am I playing it wise? It's a game of life. Am I making the
yeah.
right decision in this moment for where we want to go?
Yeah, and I feel the exact same way of you bring up this idea of baby steps, and I feel like that's where we kind of refocus a lot of the times on, and it's not like we don't want it. It is about putting effort into everyday tasks or everyday things that allow us to move forward and move that needle to the point where we're like, yes, this is everything's pointing to we can do this now and we can transition and not feel like again, the pressure is come solely on the creative part, the thing that we love doing, and now it has to hold us financially up. It's one of those things where it's like, and I brought this up on our podcast. It's like that's what brings me most fear is because I've always loved doing this, and I don't want it to be like this martyr of like it has to feed me, it has to pay my bills and all these things. Where at when it was in the beginning was just this fun conversation, this fun, lighthearted thing of like, tell me about yourself, tell me why. And then to put pressure on it so much to the point where it's like the people ask us, why do you put yourself in a corner by just focusing on Arizona? Well, it's not putting yourself in a corner. It's actually this ever evolving thing that always changes, that always has newcomers, that always has someone
You are
who
never going
is
to run out of
yeah,
content.
never gonna run out of content. And
No.
so, no, it's not that. It's having passion for something that is ever evolving and wanting to show light on that and give people a chance at the table and give them the mic to recruit
Yeah.
for themselves, like advocate for themselves and to have joy for what they created and all of these things.
I mean, you
And
wouldn't
that's
run
what
out
I
of
wanted.
content if it was just Finding Phoenix. Like you just wouldn't. And there's like how
Yeah.
many millions of people live in Arizona and then moving to Arizona and leave. Like there's always
Mhm.
going to be new options for listeners. And I think don't ever let anyone tell you niche down too much because that's not even true. But I think what you guys could challenge yourself is like, what are the fears and what would it look like if it did work? And
Mhm.
then goal
Yeah.
set from there. Cause that's how I like to work backwards. When the pandemic hit and we actually had to start from scratch ish, we already had OPC. It was
Yeah.
already in existence, but it wasn't paying our bills. What paid our bills was me touring the world and teaching in
Yeah.
real life. So I was like, okay, if this has to pay our bills, how does that look like? What is it? What does it
Mhm.
look like to put pressure on this? And how do we do it so we're not making compromises that are not because what most people want is they want a Netflix option. They want to do Pilates whenever they want to do it. They want to have access to their old class whenever they want, but they don't because they actually don't use it then. How long have you gone whether you don't check one of your streaming accounts? And so there were values that I was like, no, this is a hill I'm going to die on this because that's what makes us unique. Like you're like no, we're finding Arizona. We're not finding the US, like or the
Yeah.
Southwest
Yeah.
or whatever the Sun Belt is, whatever they like to call us. You're not that. So, I think there's things where like, this is for sure never going to change. We're never going to do that. But what does that look like if it works? And what does
Yeah.
working look like? And sometimes be afraid to dream big because it is possible. It's so scary. So I don't want to discount that. Brad and I, the only reason I can say we lucked out is that we were forced in a pandemic to make it work because it was like we had to pay our bills or we don't.
Yeah. We gotta do this.
We work for ourselves. And there is no one sending me any money for a
Mhm.
paycheck to work from home. We have a great couple that we know, and seeing them thrive today is like really fun. We watched these two people doing the dream. Like they were performers. They both were headliners on the Strip. They had their dream home. And in the same week, both of their shows closed. And
Oh.
we were like, I'm so sorry. And they said this to us. And it was something that always sticks with me. They're like, they were velvet handcuffs. And the idea of me going out and auditioning again, I just don't even want to do it. I'm most grateful that this happened. And he went back to school. He changed his life. They're having a baby. Like they both have changed, transformed what their resume is and what they do on this planet. And it's cool how it can change. But it also, when you have consistent paychecks coming in, it's hard. It's hard. So
Well, I've heard this one individual. I'm bad with names, but I'm always so invested in what people say and what their beliefs are. But it's like I heard this saying: "Do your life the 9 to 5, so that the 5 to 9 is your, you
oh yeah,
can."
you work to live, not live to work. So
Yeah,
you're like your
yeah,
9 to 5 is only there to make sure that your 5 to 9 is super cool.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's where I'm at right now in life, and it's just really been great. And I cannot tell you that it makes me feel good that A, I still have a passion for it, and B, it's building this legacy, not just for me, but for the little guy. In all honesty, fatherhood has changed a lot about how I see the world, how I perceive the world, and how I, go about the world. And his joy when he says, "Dad, I have fun doing a podcast," is the best thing that I can say about what this means to me now,
Yeah.
because it's just, again, I want him to know that I'm a good dad, but I also want him to know that I'm a good person as well, because I care enough that I have these conversations with the people, because I don't want to feel like I don't love the world. I don't want him to think that you can't you need to be afraid of everyone. I want him to know that there are good people out there, and there's a community that will back him. And so hopefully down the road he'll see a couple of the episodes and be like, "My dad, I love him. He did a great job doing this."
That's so beautiful. That's amazing. And it is interesting when we can see our life through the lens of someone else, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that can weigh on us that actually have nothing to do with the big picture, but
Yeah.
they feel very important. There are certain things that really make sure that they're like, I want to be heard and I want to be seen, that actually are not that big of a deal and they're not part of the goals. But when the obstacle happens or the mess happens, they can feel like their priority. And then you
Yeah.
have this guy, his name's Atlas, right?
Yeah, his name's
Yeah.
Atlas, yeah.
Atlas go, did you have fun doing this thing that you love? And it's like, yeah, thank you for bringing me back down to earth and reminding
Yeah.
me what I do. It's so fun. It's so cute.
Yeah. It's just something about his joy of the world and life itself. It just brings me back to, like, calm and steady. And again, it's like fatherhood has changed me 100% from this. I always felt like I was like, I'm so selfish. I'm like, I want so much for myself. Then he came into my world and he's changed so much about me. And I want so much for him, and so much for him to see everything and give him a lot of the things that I didn't have as a child. But I understood, I understand now as an adult, my parents did the best that they could with everything that they had. And that is all I want to do for him. And if that means, keep podcasting because it makes you happy, dad, then I'm going to keep doing that. And, there's a lot of things that it's just, again, they're not as important in hindsight right now, because I'm just really so glad that he's given me the opportunity to see the world and through his eyes and through his perspective, and want to just make it the happiest, joyous childhood ever.
Oh my goodness. And also, you're not sacrificing something you love because you think it will make that. You're showing your son, you and Britt are both showing your child, like, you can do things that make you happy and you don't have to sacrifice the things you love to do that. I think it's really cool for him to grow up in
Yeah.
a household where like, yes, you have a 9 to 5, but also you have this other thing that makes you really happy and you're dedicated to it and you see it through. We had a guest on episode 5, everyone.
Wow.
She said, actions are caught, not taught. She's very aware that her kids are watching what she says about herself and what she
Mhm.
does. I
Yeah.
want to ask, we don't have Britt here today, so unfortunately we'll have to hang out with her another moment, but you work with your spouse on
Yes.
this podcast. Brad and I work together, and I'm sure you guys get all the time. I don't know. I don't want to assume, but people are like, oh my God, tell me how you and Brad to work together because I think I want to work with my partner. I find myself going, maybe don't do it. And I love working with my husband, but also I'm particularly aware that it's not unicorn and glitter all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
tell us how it came to be that Britt started working on the show, and
Mhm.
how do you two each share this incredible podcast together? How do you guys make it work?
Yeah. So we had this conversation too. It's like on my podcast where I told you about how I met her through work and through working in a co-working office and just again being intimidated by someone of her stature at the time. She had her own business and I was just working my first big boy job out of college. And really it was like I was interested in her and she asked me for my Wi-Fi password. We had these conversations. We were getting to know each other. And then I was like, I want to take you out on a date. I don't think I have the time during the weekend. And kind of worried to tell you why. And she's like, why are you embarrassed? I'm like, I'm embarrassed because I have this podcast that keeps me very busy when I'm not working here on my job. And she's like, oh, I love podcasts. So she binged the entirety of all my podcasts that weekend. And she was like, look, I love what you do. I think it's so interesting. Can I help you somehow? Is there some way I can help you take photos or something? I was like, that would be really great. That would be really awesome, and I would thank you so much, and if I pay you, like, let me she's like, "No, no, no, just let me help you, and you can teach me," and so I was like she was interested in photography at the time, so she was like, "Okay, let's go do this first episode," and it actually turned into a date. It was really her way of showing interest in me and wanting to do this together, and she took photos the very first time as a date, and we, had it was luckily at an ice cream shop, and it was this, like, shaved ice. So she took photos, we ate and had dessert afterwards, and then it evolved into dating a lot, and she was being involved. She was helping me produce, she was helping me get clients, get people on the show. And then she came up with ideas on how to actually make this a business. And I took it to heart because she owned her own business. And we had these conversations before about like, how does Finding Arizona become more than just a podcast? How do we approach it in a business aspect? And I think what is the best part about our relationship is I'm very open to her having a conversation with me. Communication, I think, is our best ability between the two of us. I think one, her vulnerability and an empathetic nature to connect with me and wanting to share her ideas was the biggest part of how we grew together and how we emotionally stayed connected, but also really move forward in hard times. Having being communicative and just communicating how we feel, how we think we should go about, moving forward through a struggle or anything like that. I think that is the best way that we kind of came together and said, okay, this is how the business work. I showed her everything. I was like, this is how I do everything. Where do I go from here? Like, how do I go and move this forward? How do I make this a business? How do I, do my taxes through this and all these things? And so she sat down with me. We've had this conversations on more than one occasion of these are the things that you need to have this business thrive. And so she was kind of teaching me and being my coach. And now I'd like to say we're on the same page a lot of the times when it comes to what we should be providing, what we should be doing next, should be the next goal, baby step forward. And communication, I think having those points in our relationship to talk about ourselves and talk about how we feel about each other, but B, talk about the business. So typically we'll have, and this is kind of looking into our relationship, at the end of the year, we'll have kind of this business conversation, but throughout the year, we'll have personal conversation, go on dates, really try our best to talk about, leave the business side and talk about our goals as parents and our goals as a couple, and really put that towards our date life, and then leave the business aspect for, the quarterly stuff, the quarterly
Yeah.
meetings, and having those really hard conversations like, how are we going to make money off of this, or how are we going to, move forward into the next quarter of like business, and what are events are we going to go to, who are we connecting with, how are we even teaching ourselves new things so that we can add it to our repertoire of things that we provide for the podcast. So I think having a point of conversation with your significant other and making sure you also separate some of those things, because it can get really murky
Yeah.
if you bring in, and she's trying to have a conversation about relationships, but you're trying to talk about the business. It's really separating those two entities. And I like to say church and state sort of thing,
Yeah.
but that sort of idea of like, we really try our best to have those date nights throughout the year and talk about our relationship, talk about who we are, talk about things that don't do anything with the podcast or business, and then leaving scheduled appointment dates of businessy talk and things like that. So it can be however you want to retrofit that, whether if you want to talk more about the business, or, you want to have more dates, whatever it may be. But I think having those scheduled items is very vital to checking in, not only for yourself, but for your significant other if you are working with them, and making sure that you're, what we say, on the same page and moving forward together.
Yeah. I think that's really, I love that you prioritize the relationship, because I think if we prioritize the business goals, then it's
You
really
forget.
easy to forget why you're doing it and what it's for. And if you are someone who works for yourself, the business has to work for you.
Yep.
And otherwise, you just created yourself a boss that's very demanding.
Mhm.
So when we bought this house in Vegas, we sat down in April of 2020. We're like, well, what do we want for our lives?
Mhm.
Forget the business. What do we want for our lives? Where do we want to live? Where do we want to work? What does our schedule look like? How much money do we make? How much does it cost to live the life we want to live?
Yeah.
And then we went to the business and go, okay, the business has to support this life as opposed to us supporting the business. And I think that that's really important. And so, yeah, you're right. However you want to retrofit that, y'all, is up to you, but make sure your personal goals are the priority, because
Yeah.
whether you work for yourself or you have a job, the
Yeah.
job is there because it gives you access to the things that you want. There's this
Mhm.
amazing book that I read so many years ago, and it's called, I want to say it's called it's like not Sunny Side Up, but it was like something like that. And it was not about whether you saw the glass half full or the glass half empty. You saw something in the glass. But one of the things that she said in there was about parking or driving away. The story was like she was at brunch and it was outdoors, and a
Mhm.
car drove up and the car was idling. So it was pulled up to park, but it didn't turn off. It just idled.
Yeah.
And she watched how she stopped her conversation, and then how the whole area of the brunch stopped their conversation to look at, like, what is this car doing? Because it makes
Yeah.
everyone uneasy. What is this car do? Is it going to go? Is it going to stay? What's going on? And so the idea was like, you need to park or drive away. And then she went into a story about a person who didn't love their job. It wasn't awesome. But when they actually looked for other jobs, what they realized was, well, this job allows me to pay for the private school my kids are in. I get off work at a time that lets me spend time with them. Lets me do this. And so she reframed the job that she had to, this job may not be my dream job, but it provides me with the dream life I have.
Yeah.
And we can get a little confused. And so I just want to go back to know what your goals are for your relationship or for your family or for yourself, if you're by yourself. And then the business goals have to reflect that.
I think I look back on the early part of our relationship and I say to myself, I was embarrassed at the time because of the podcast just taking up so much time in my life. I look back at it now, I'm like, I was sort of embarrassed too. And I didn't address this personally because I didn't want it to take over her life as well. Because I really wanted this thing to really be something, but I also didn't want it to take over her life and be,
Yeah.
but she has shown me that it can provide us with an opportunity to, like you said, live the life that we want and share so much of our own world of like, she's made up these things of like the blog wouldn't be what it is today without her. The vlog is a combination of all of our videos, but it's like this way of sharing our family life with our fans, but also it's like this other thing of like it's home movies for our family who live far away from us that don't get a chance to see us a lot. So it's like this beautiful thing of sharing that with them, but also with our fans as well. And she's shown so much of how much she cares about this podcast and how much she cares about others that I'm still amazed by her. I'm still intimidated by her on so many of those factors because without her being in my corner, I don't think that I would be the person that I am today, but I also don't think the business would be where it's at today. And I thank her all the time. And I hope she knows this, but I think she is the cornerstone of what makes this podcast have a heart. And I think she's the best part of me. She's the best part of our family. And she's really, truly this entity that I cannot describe any more than she is the heart of this business.
Oh my gosh. Well, we have to let Britt, when she's listening to us, have a moment to enjoy that lovely speech
Yeah.
for her. So we're going to take a brief break and then we're going to find out people can find you and Finding Arizona and all the things that you guys are doing together. Okay, Jose, you are like one of the most beautiful humans in the world. And I think everyone is hoping that their husband is telling someone that exact same
Oh.
speech that you just said about them. Finding Arizona, they can find it anywhere that they're listening to this
Mhm.
podcast. But do they have to live in Arizona? Is this something they can enjoy if they're visiting Arizona? And also, what else do you and Britt have for our listeners?
Yeah, so this is available on all podcast platforms, of course, but we also have now video format to a lot of these episodes that we provide on YouTube. And on top of that, like I was discussing earlier in the podcast, we have a vlog that's a little bit of this family life and what we do for the business. We go to events as well, meeting new people, networking, and we share that along with on the YouTube. We have a website that is available for a blog that gets a little bit more of what we've learned and found through the community and what we're passionate about, what we're intrigued by. It's a little bit more of the inside of our minds being put out into this like blog form so that Britt puts that together. But it's again, it's all of these things get can be found at our website, findingarizonapodcast.com, but also on our YouTube page, Finding Arizona Podcast. You'll just search it and you'll find us, you'll see us. We're big smiley people, and we always try our best to make sure that it's routinely updated and that you're constantly getting new items every week. And on top of that, I mean, other events that we're going to on a very routine basis, you can catch us a lot of at the community events throughout Phoenix. And we are also trying to do a little bit more of in person 101 classes, teaching the kind of 101 of podcasting. Britt has done an event where she's speaking about it at Phoenix Design Week. There are a couple of other events that I don't have it in front of me, but I wish I could give you some more information on. And I will actually send an email to you so you
Yeah.
can provide that to individuals. But there are a lot more events that we're going to be in person for that you can catch us at, say hi, and get a little bit more one to one action with us. And you'll get to see Atlas too. Atlas loves going on these little adventure excursions, and you'll see him in his little Finding Arizona shirt. And he's always down to clown, and he's a fun time.
Oh my gosh, so fun. Yes, you guys should absolutely be teaching people how to podcast and get
Thank you.
started because you've been doing it for 10 years.
Yes.
So
And on top of all of those things that we do in person and all that, we actually just started this. And this is something of the service arm of what we provide in video production, audio production. We're calling it the Found House, and you can find it under our webpage, the Found House, over at findingarizonapodcast.com, where you can actually, if you want to work with us one to one and start your own podcast, we provide that option as well.
awesome. That is what we need. Thank you for
Yes.
doing that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you guys, all those links are, of course, in the show notes. And if you are wondering about how Finding Arizona podcast is, I was on it with Brad. Brad made an appearance. Holy moly, it's rare. So go listen. You get to hear the inside of his brain on all the things.
I love Brad,
I
by the
know, we
way.
love Brad. And you know what? Here's the thing. Everyone loves Brad. And whenever I go anywhere without Brad, they're just like, where's Brad? Where's Brad? So that's why he's not actually allowed to not be there. Cause I'm like, am I chopped liver? So
It's right over there. Go look.
yeah, yeah.
And that's sometimes how I feel about Brit. And this is the crux of having parenthood be a part of what we do is some of these events are late at night and Atlas can't go to those. So one of us has to stay behind to do bedtime story time, and one of us has to go. And then if one of us goes, like, where's the other person?
Yeah, where are
And
they?
so it's
Is
like,
everything what's
it's
going
like,
on? Well, I love that. It's
yeah.
like, okay, hi, but I'm right here. So, you have been such a gem already, but we love to end the episode with be it action items, bold, executable, intrinsic, or targeted steps people can take to be it till they see it. What do you have for us?
Mhm. I think it goes back to what we were talking about, those baby goal routines set for yourselves. I think you should always try your best to set a big goal, but also make sure that you're taking those routine steps or those small steps forward to allow yourself and what your goal is to move to approach that. Take those tiny steps that you know are digestible, edible, that you can do, and make sure that you're reaching closer and closer. Because if you look back on those little steps, you will actually see that you are providing yourself the opportunity to move forward. And one of the big things that I keep going back to, or at least what in our conversations, like life responds to effort. That's something that I heard is life responds to effort. And if you're not making an effort, you're not moving anywhere, you're stagnant. You have to make an effort on whatever there's those little things that matter and those little things that count to your goals.
Oh my God, mic drop on that. That is brilliant. That is, rewind everyone, listen to that last, that was freaking amazing. Jose, fine Arizona, thank you for being
Thank
you. Thank
you.
you for sharing your story. Give Britt some love from us. We're hopefully going to see
Absolutely.
you guys when we're in person in Arizona soon. Y'all, how are you going to use these tips in your life? Tag Finding Arizona, tag the Be It Pod. Share this with a friend. Share this with an Arizonan, but also share it with someone who needs to hear that 10 years ago was baby steps and just showing up and being consistent. Like we all need these inspirations in our lives. And until next time, be it till you see it. That's all I got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Be It Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day. Be It Till You See It is a production of the Bloom Podcast Network. If you want to leave us a message or a question that we might read on another episode, you can text us at +1 310 905 5534 or send a DM on Instagram at BeItPod.
It's written, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Crowell.
It is transcribed, produced, and edited by the epic team at Disenyo.co.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to Melissa Solomon for creating our visuals.
Also to Angelina Herrico for adding all of our content to our website. And finally, to Meredith Root for keeping us all on point and on time.